What's up, BookTube? Welcome back. My name is Laura if you're new here, and today I'm talking about everything that I read in June. So I actually had a really good reading month in June. I read 7 books, which gave me a total of 2,106 pages, which is kind of a lot for me. I think normally I average around like 1,400 pages or so. So I definitely read more than I normally do, so that's very exciting. And I also just really enjoyed everything that I read. For the most part, there were some books that I was just like okay about, but like I didn't outright dislike anything, which is really good. I find that this year I've been doing a lot better at like DNFing books that I'm just not enjoying, and also like I'm just doing better at picking books that I'm going to enjoy. So even though I'm like easier to DNF than I ever was before, I'm also DNFing less because I'm just not picking up books that I end up DNFing. So that is excellent. I love that for me. But without further ado, let's just get right into the books that I have to talk about today. Starting with the Dragon Tapestry by Kay O'Neill. This one is so freaking cute. Oh my god. This is the third and final book in the Dragon Society series, which is a middle grade graphic novel series, and I just absolutely adore it. This book just came out on June 1st, and I could not wait to get my hands on it, so I read it like pretty much right away, and I just adored it so much. It follows the same characters from the first 2 books, and it just kind of picks up a couple of years later, and we just get to check in on everybody and see how they're doing, and it was just lovely. I loved this book so much. I want to own this series, that way I can just reread them whenever I want to, because they are just the epitome of joy. They are just such a joyful, just happy series. There's really no plot to them. They're mainly just character focused. So if you're looking for a like really interesting plot with all these like twists and turns, you are not gonna find that here. This is really just getting to know these beautiful characters and this lush, gorgeous world and all these adorable little tea dragons. That is all that this is, and it is delightful. So I highly recommend this one. I don't think I have a favorite. I gave all 3 of these books 5 stars. I just love all of them so equally. Just overall, this is just such a wonderful series, and I love them so much. After that, I read The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This one is a contemporary novel in verse, and it's a coming-of-age story of this young boy who we see grow up from childhood all the way up into his teenage and college years, and it's his kind of origin stories of him finding himself through the art of drag. This was the June pick for the Queer Joy Book Club that I'm part of, which, if you missed my announcement in my last video, I'm going to be co-hosting the July live show. I will leave all those links down below for you guys to check out. But yeah, so this book was our June book, and I didn't dislike it, but I didn't like love it either. I do really enjoy novels in verse, but this one I think would have benefited from being from not being in verse, just because so much of this character's story and all of his major periods of growth centered on an event that happened with a person. His first kiss, or his first experiences doing these different things, or like a fight with a friend. All of his major periods of growth happened because of a different character in the book, and I feel like because it was in verse, we didn't really have a chance to get to know the side characters very well. So it was kind of difficult for me to really feel invested in his story, because I didn't really know the backstory of the characters that he was interacting with. So I still enjoyed it, liked the writing, I liked the like general story, and there were some great moments in here, especially the very end of it, but it just wasn't like my absolute favorite thing in the world, you know? But overall, I still gave it 3 stars. After that, I read They Both Die at the End by Silvera. This was a buddy read that I did with Roxanne Can Read as part of a reading challenge that her and I were doing together. This book fucking destroyed me. Oh my god. I was like, I obviously knew from the title that it was going to have a heartbreaking ending, but I didn't think it was gonna get me that hard, and it did. Oh my god. I ended up like sitting down, I was like, hey, I'm just gonna read for like an hour maybe. The audiobook at 2 times speed was only 4 hours, so I was like, I'll just listen to a little bit for right now. No, I ended up sitting there for the full 4 hours. I did not move, and I just sat there sobbing the entire time. I think the first time I cried in this book was at like maybe 7% in, I think it was. Like, it was just heartbreaking from the start. It was just this emotional gut punch, and I loved every second of it. I don't know why I'm like this, but I really like books that just break me emotionally. Maybe I need therapy, but that is a conversation for a different day. Besides the point, I just love books that are just emotionally damaging, and this one really scratched that itch for me. I gave it 5 stars. I really don't know what else to say. I guess the synopsis would be good. It's kind of contemporary, but also there's like a sci-fi twist to it a little bit, but basically it takes place in like present day, our world, except the twist on it is that the government somehow knows when each person is going to die. So every single day between midnight and 3 a.m. if you get a phone call from this one number, they are calling to inform you that it is your death day. They cannot tell you how you're going to die or what time or any of the details, just that it is going to happen that day, and there is literally nothing you can do to stop it from happening. The government just refuses to explain how they know this. So as a result of this, there's been this whole like consumerism thing surrounding the death days. So there's like different kinds of events and places you can go to have like your best last day kind of thing. There is an app that was created called the Last Friend app for people who get their phone call and don't have anyone to spend their last day with, who just don't want to be alone on their last day. And that is how our two main characters meet. The one character is this like super anxious, socially awkward guy. His mom passed away and his dad is currently in a coma. And then our other main character is this like bad boy, like getting into fights all the time. He actually gets his phone call while he's in the middle of like almost murdering a guy. So because he can't go back to his orphanage where he lives to go see his family, his like chosen family, before he died, because he's now running from the police, he ends up doing the Last Friend app, and these two just connect from there. And it is this beautiful story. They have like less than 24 hours together, but it is just the most heartwarming story ever. Just this really unlikely pair. Such a wonderful story, and I just really enjoyed every second of it, even though I was just sobbing all the way through so many times throughout this book. Just left me wrecked and just completely destroyed, and I loved it. So if you're in the mood for a good cry, definitely check this out. It will not disappoint in that sense. After that, I read It's Been a Pleasure, Noni Blake by Claire Christian. This one was a buddy read with Mia over at Books and Chamomile Tea on Instagram, who I will link down below. This one is an adult contemporary romance about a woman who is in her 30s and she's just coming out of a 10-year-long relationship, and she realizes that she has never lived her life for herself. She has never given herself the time or the room to make herself happy. She's always been there for other people, but never for herself. And now she's almost 40 and she's realizing that she just has no joy. She is deeply self-conscious of her body and her appearance. She's bored with her career. She just wants something that will make her happy, and she's tired of just like living for other people and trying to be responsible and being miserable as a result. So she decides to go on a pleasure quest just wherever she wants, and she wants to stop caring about how she looks, stop caring about all of her insecurities, and trying to be the like responsible adult that people have expected her to be. So she goes off to Europe, and her whole plan is to just sleep with whoever the hell she wants to. She wants to actually feel pleasure for pretty much the first time in her life. So that's what she does, and she ends up going all over Europe. She makes friends along the way. She really finds herself, and she also unexpectedly finds a romance. She's also just unapologetically bisexual. She is very out and proud about that, and I love seeing that, because I feel like with books that have bisexual main characters, they usually only end up exploring like one side of their sexuality, just because like stigma around being slutty. It's just pretty rare for characters to actually have more than one like sexual partner in a book, at least with the ones that I read. But Noni Blake has no problems being viewed as somebody who is a slut, which I love. I love seeing women just embracing their sexuality and just embracing themselves as sexual beings. It just brings me so much joy. If you don't know, I work in a adult toy store, so like my entire job is helping people embrace their sexuality and just like learn how to kind of explore their own bodies and just be comfortable with themselves, and like learning how to give themselves pleasure. And I love that part of my job, and I saw those kind of same sentiments mirrored in the character of Noni. So I saw a lot of myself in Noni Blake, and I just really enjoyed this book so much. The romance was amazing. Noni Blake is just like living the life that I want to live so desperately. Like, I loved this book so much. Oh wait, I actually bought this book. I just realized that I could have been holding it up this whole time. I didn't have to insert a picture of it. This one I read on audiobook, but I loved it so much that I wanted to own it. So I went out and I bought it, and like it was like the last one on the shelf too. So it was like it was meant for me. But yeah, I loved this book so much. It was just such a joy to read. I can definitely see myself like rereading this one. It's probably a new favorite romance as well. Like I loved this so much, and I definitely recommend it. So thank you so much to Mia for the recommendation. You like found a new favorite for me, so thank you so much. But yeah, I loved it. 5 stars. Next up was Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee. This is a first book in a series that takes place in a like post-apocalyptic world. I think it's like a few hundred years in the future, but basically World War III was this like nuclear war, and after that war people started being born with superpowers, and so with superheroes obviously comes supervillains as well. But the fun thing with this series is that it does not follow those who have powers, it follows the people who do not have powers, so kind of like the sidekicks or just kind of your like average everyday people. So the first book follows our main character, who is the daughter of the 2 most like famous superheroes in her city, and she has no powers of her own, but she still wants to be involved in the superhero world somehow, and she ends up applying for an internship for a kind of mysterious person. She has no idea who it is, but it ends up being the villain of the town that she's now working for, and she keeps the job as kind of like a fuck you to her parents. She loves her parents very dearly, but she's kind of bitter that she doesn't have any powers, and she's constantly being treated kind of like a child as a result of it. So she keeps this job and is working for her parents' arch nemesis just because it's fun for her, and our story kind of goes from there. And she has this like beautiful group of friends as well, and it was really cute. It's also a sapphic romance. This whole series in general is very gay and I love it. I think book 2 follows a transgender character, and then book 3 follows an asexual main character. This book itself I gave 3 stars. I did really enjoy it. I just found it to be very predictable. It was still fun to read, but like nothing surprised me. It was very obvious from the start of like where things were going. I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way, because it felt like a comic book, because like with comic books you kind of know where things are going. I just prefer being surprised when it comes to books. That's why I like a little bit of a lower rating, but like still a good rating, still really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it, and I cannot wait to get to the next books in the series. I then got an e-arc from NetGalley of A God in the Human Body by Tolu Akinyemi. This is a poetry collection, and I'm not too sure how to like describe what it's about. It's poetry, so it's a little bit difficult to like pin it down to like a synopsis. I guess the easiest way to describe it is that it's just about kind of life. It talks about like politics and feminism and different things like that. I didn't love this, to be honest. I gave it 2 stars. It was promising. I think the author definitely is a talented writer. I just found that the topics that were spoken about, it didn't get deep enough for me to like really get anything from it. I feel like this would have been better more as a series of essays rather than poetry, just because again like I couldn't get deep enough into the topics for it to really mean anything or kind of like teach me anything at all. It just felt very surface level. So while the writing was very good and the topics themselves were interesting, there just wasn't enough substance for it to be really engaging and kind of keep me interested. But I do definitely want to read more from this author, because again they do have some really good writing in there. I just wanted more from it, you know? Cover is gorgeous though, love the cover of it. And then the last thing that I read in June was Sword in the Stars by A.R. Capetta and Cori McCarthy. This took me a month and a half to read. Like, holy shit. I started this like May 20th, I think it was, and I finished it like at midnight on June 30th. Like, I just made it into June, which is weird because like I did like this book. It was good. There was just so much going on. I gave it 3 stars just because like it was so hard to follow. It was just overwhelming with the amount of stuff that was going on here. So basically this is a King Arthur retelling, but it's all like gender bent and like set in space as well in the first book. It follows a whole bunch of main characters, but one of them is Merlin. He's been around for thousands of years and he's slowly been aging backwards, and his whole purpose in life is to make sure that the legend of King Arthur finally plays out. So he's been trying to train a whole bunch of reincarnations of Arthur over the last several thousand years, but they keep dying before the legend can play out, and so he has to kind of come back later on and like find the new Arthur and start again. But the problem is that with his backwards aging, this is his last chance. If this Arthur fails the next time that he comes around, he will be too young to be able to do anything. He'll probably be like an infant, if not just gone from existence. So for his very last King Arthur, he meets Ari, who is the first female King Arthur that he's ever met. I did love the first book. The first book got 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. But the first book was mostly set in space, and they were kind of like dealing with their own space stuff and like kind of having the Arthur stuff at the same time. But then in this one they had to create a time portal and go back to the past. So Merlin, Ari, Gwen, like all of their friends, the whole gang, they end up portaling back to medieval Earth at the very start of the Arthur story. So they're all meeting like the actual King Arthur, the very first one. Merlin is facing his older self, and they have to try and keep the story on the right path without disrupting the space-time continuum. Okay, my SD card just fell out, so sorry if the angle was suddenly a bit different. I'm not sure where that cut off, but basically they just have to go back in time and make sure that everything is good before they can like go back home and deal with their own bullshit happening in space. And there's so much more happening too. There's a lot. There is so much going on that I don't even really know how to like properly explain this book, but like it was just way too much. I think that this would have been better if it was a trilogy, to be honest, just so they could like spread things out a bit more, because it was just overwhelming. There was way too much going on. It was very hard to follow. I still really enjoyed it, just because I love the characters so much. Like this whole found family thing, the characters in here are what really brought it together. So for that, I still loved it, but just the plot, there was just too much, way too much going on. So yeah, so I gave this one 3 stars. But yeah, so those are all the books that I read for the month of June. Lots of good stuff for last month, and I have a whole bunch of really exciting books for July as well. I'll leave my TBR video linked on the screen as well as down below for you guys if you'd like to check that out. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!